like I said, one of the biggest lessons I got is, keeping money is more important than making it. And that's so important of a lesson. Someone could make, $500,000 a year and absolutely retire as a billionaire. Once you understand compounding, it's phenomenal what can happen with that. You don't have to run a unicorn business in order to achieve all of your financial goals that you have. You just got to be smart about how money works. And the mindset part of it is that it's understanding that it's not chasing the egotistical things that we are taught to chase. It's not chasing the so-called entrepreneurship that we have now on Instagram, that everyone's a freaking entrepreneur, So these things, being able to look past those things and just focus on the goal and understanding that the goal is to make money.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Minesh Bhindi, who is going to share his mindset around investing and how he has built financial success. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward. How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Napoleon Hill. Success in life depends upon happiness, and happiness is found in no other way than through service that is rendered in a spirit of love. We're going to talk about some of those subjects in today's episode. Last week's action step was to get out of your normal environment and ask, what do you want in life? What do you have to do to achieve that, and do the work? All right, I know it's hard to do all of that in a week. It's actually a months-long process just to figure out what you want in life. And so I get it. If you haven't done it already, it's time to work on it. And if you need help, that's what I coach people on, is getting clarity in all those areas. Before we get to our episode, I want to talk about a British phrase I heard growing up. Penny wise, pound foolish. It refers to people who are really smart with small financial decisions, but make big mistakes with large financial decisions. It's human nature to behave this way. Large purchases have a way of anchoring us, and we think differently. For example, people will drive to use a $1 coupon at the grocery store, but won't drive to save $100 on a new car, or even larger amounts. It's because of the comparator number. $1 off of $2 is big, but $100 off of $25,000 is nothing. The reality is, it's still $100. Think carefully about your big spends. It's how you build wealth, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I just want to let you know this episode was recorded about 2.5 months ago, before the current market drop due to the virus. And I wanted you to be aware of that as we talk about markets. Our guest is Minesh. He started out negotiating and selling real estate when he was 16 years old. Together with his father, he pioneered a unique no money down real estate transaction process in the UK. He went on to help investors purchase properties worth over $20 million with this strategy. At the age of 18, he also completed his first independent real estate deal for 3 flats in the heart of London's financial district, which netted him a cash back on purchase of £68,000 and £250,000 in equity. After a friend suggested that Minesh help others do what came to him naturally, he created an investment education company. Twice a month for the next 3 or 4 years, he spoke at notable investment seminars, as well as organizing his own. He was invited at the age of 23 to share the 2-arena stage with Sir Richard Branson, and has spoken around the world, from Hawaii to New Zealand. His co-speakers have included renowned business icons such as Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple. To date, Minesh has delivered over 550 presentations to high net worth individuals around the world. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Soul, Minesh Bhindi. It's great to have you join us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I'm excited to learn from you. So we always start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
My school, nothing. My family, a lot. My dad was always involved in business one way or another. And I sort of grew up around that. And then at 16, when I started negotiating real estate, that was because I was observing my dad do it. And one day I thought, hey, well, very arrogantly, to be honest, I said to him after he got off the phone, that sounds easy. I don't know why you guys stress over this so much. Obviously knowing zero about it. And luckily, instead of telling me to screw off, he said, well, show me it's easy. And then I had to go and figure it out. So I learned a lot through my family about money.
So what was some of those early real estate deals that you did?
Well, first, I obviously at 16, I couldn't buy anything, but I was negotiating. My dad used to work with a consortium of investors and basically negotiate deals, and they all used to buy a unit, very, very simple structure. And I started negotiating those types of deals. We were specializing in no money down real estate in London. And because I didn't have an attachment to getting the deal done, I could walk away from it, which then led me to getting better deals than anybody else could get. So, yeah, it was basically negotiating new build properties with discounts, structuring them and selling them. So
why did you have that ability to, in other words, not be emotionally involved in the deal? Because most people aren't that way.
Yeah, I think, there's part of it which is major luck, which is the fact that I was 16 years old and I didn't have a house. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have a family. I didn't have children. I didn't have these things in way to sort of make me go, hold on a second, if this doesn't work out, what am I going to do? And then, also the fact that if I knew that if the deal didn't happen, it wasn't really going to change my life too much. I still had to go to school. I still had to do my homework. It was play for me rather than anything else.
And, I think there's an important lesson. If we can live life playing, it becomes a lot more fun and a lot easier, doesn't it?
100%. And that becomes progressively harder as you grow older. And that's what you've got to battle against. I think that's the number one thing.
So does it grow harder because you have more obligations or because you expect more?
Both. I think majority of it is the obligations. And as a result of the obligations, you expect more. And as a result of the expecting more, you get more obligations. So you've got to, it's how do you, back then, my first deal, I got a £68,000. This is the first amount of properties I bought, which is about 2 years after starting to negotiate. I got a £68,000 cashback with £250,000 in equity 3 properties in the financial district of London. And at that point, now you have that much wealth. So now you've got a whole different question around, okay, what do I do with this wealth? How do I keep this wealth, et cetera, et cetera? And that question only gets stronger when you have more money and you have more obligations in life and more responsibilities. But that shapes a man, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think there's a time where enough is enough?
No, I think the illusion of enough, when people say is enough enough, they're looking at it from a very material world perspective. And if that's how you're judging it, well, you're giving no respect to your spirit. And I don't think anyone's spirit lives by the rule of enough is enough.
So let's redefine the question. Is there enough is enough for money versus your personal growth, which sounds more what you were referring to?
Yeah, but for me, money is just a scorecard of personal growth. So yeah, sure, enough. There is definitely enough money to hit, of course. However, if one of your driving forces is success, well, then really there's no such thing as enough is enough money, because if the driving force is success and personal growth as a better CEO, as a better investor, as a better financial manager, then really at the moment that the numbers stop growing, you've failed in essence.
And again, it's all how you determine what your goals are and what you want. And then that kind of brings about what you're going to judge yourself against.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I know at one time you had the pleasure of being on the same stage as Richard Branson. What was that like?
That was cool. It was about 7 years after I started speaking and teaching people how to invest. And that was the event that I decided that I was no longer going to speak on stage about investing, because I was, I think, 23 years old or something like that. And I just looked around the industry, and for me, it was, well, a lot of my peers are trying to get to a stage where they speak on the same stage as Richard Branson, and I've sort of done it at 23. What's next? And I didn't want to, and I wanted a next evolution of my business career as well. So that it was a great event, but it was also a very defining event for me to decide, okay, I'm done with the speaking side now.
And that happened very early in life for you. What would you say are some of the principles that allowed you to have that much success by 23?
Personally, I think having the right people around me was the number one thing. I mean, I remember after I was making money along the way negotiating deals, but as soon as I did that first property deal and I got a £68,000 check on the day of completion, that weekend I flew to Monaco with a friend of mine, and I think we spent £10,000 of it in a very, very stupid, young man way. Champagne and everything. So, and when I got back from that, one of my mentors sat me down and started talking to me about the idea of keeping money versus just making it. And so, I think that was one of the key defining things from 18 to 23 that sort of helped me understand what to do and how to do it.
And that's very true. And I think in the real estate space, it's also a big issue is people are all about cash flow, which is good. And you need cash flow, but to actually build wealth and have assets and actually have that separate from everything else is not something that people talk about as much.
Yeah, I mean, just in 2008, no matter how much cash flow you had, the bank still wanted your property because it was undervalued. So there is that element to it. And realistically, no amount of cash flow, according to the parameters of what was a reasonable amount of cash flow back then, was going to keep your property out of the hands of, mortgage companies if the numbers didn't stack up on the valuation of the property.
So did you go through a struggle in 2008?
I went through a struggle, but it was a much more different struggle. I didn't go through the struggle of losing money, a lot of money in 2008 on my investing side because of that very important chat I had with my mentors about keeping money. So while we were doing cashback deals, et cetera, I wasn't going out and spending the cashbacks, which is really a low interest loan. I wasn't spending that on cars, on holidays, on things like that. So I had cash reserves to sort of see through that period. The struggle for me was, by then we were teaching people how to trade the stock market and obviously invest in real estate. And I had to go and reevaluate what I was doing from a teaching perspective and the eligibility of what I was teaching for the mass audience. And I had to decide what I wanted to do in life, which was, do I want to teach and make money, or do I want to teach and actually make a difference? And so that was my challenge through that 2008 period.
And I think there are a lot of people out there who teach specifically for the goal of making money and not to actually teach you the lessons. Of course. They also know that a lot of people who buy courses don't actually do anything. And so it doesn't even matter if they did a good or bad job. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So I always encourage people, if you're going to do something, then commit to it and do the work, because that's really what it comes down to. Buying the course isn't going to change your life. Showing up and going through the course and doing the work is what will change your life.
It's shocking to me that people will spend $5,000 on an investment education program like one of mine, but they will not get up off their ass and open a broker account. It's unreal to me how often that happens in the world. Luckily, touch wood, I don't get too many of those people because we go through an application process with what we do. But it's so shocking to me how many people will not. In fact, you don't even have to get up off your ass anymore, because you can do it via, especially you guys in the States, you're very lucky. You've got apps like Robinhood that you can download on your iPhone and do it while you're sitting comfortably on your ass, and people still don't do that. It's so interesting. People will pay for so much information, but they won't even take the first step. That's fascinating to me.
So it's funny because I'm going back through Expert Secrets from Russell Brunson, and it's all about creating funnels and how you get people to buy. And I'm working on marketing this quarter. And he basically says in the book, he goes, if you're going to sell a program or course to people who take action, you have essentially eliminated 98% of the market, because they won't. So why do you think that is? Why don't people take action?
Firstly, it's true. And I've designed my business and my life to only work with those people. So we only take 155 people a year. And they go through an application process to figure that out. So we've got a very high, execution rate, so to say, when it comes to somebody becoming a client of mine. And the reason I think people don't take action is because, number one, they're terrified. And number two, no one's giving them the confidence enough to actually take the step that matters. Everyone has priced information as such a high commodity that everyone thinks that that's what's valuable. We always get told knowledge is king, knowledge is power, et cetera, et cetera. Knowledge is shit unless you do something with it.
And that is very true. I think when I grew up, knowledge was power. Today, Google is knowledge. You have to do something with it. And that has been a massive shift.
Absolutely. You got knowledge at your fingertips 24/7. There's content, information coming at you. What are you doing with it? That's the key.
And that's very true. So we're going to dig into your courses. Before we do, I want to just take a step back. One of the cores that we talk about is health. Because if you don't have good health, and if you're not strong and you don't have that, it affects the rest of your life. And it makes it hard to take action and do other things because you don't have the energy and the ability. I know that you sent an email earlier this year, just kind of talking about the past year. And I know you had some struggles with health, and then from there, you've made some turnaround. So I just love for you to talk a little bit about what does health mean to you, and then how do you actually take action?
Yeah, so I mean, I always grew up a fat kid. Always. I was always consistently putting on weight up until I was maybe 25 years old. And that was a combination of, coming from a family that didn't understand health, didn't prioritize it, prioritize connection over food a lot more. And, you're Indian, so you'll understand that Indian family, community, culture sort of perspective of surrounding events and things like that with food, right? It's one of the ways that we sort of communicate in a way. And so that's what I always grew up with. So I didn't even understand the idea of health. It wasn't even a possibility, so to say, in my mind. Everyone just grew unhealthier, so to say, as years went by. It was just normal. That was just the norm. And so I decided, it was funny because I decided after a doctor appointment, I was going on a trip, and I suddenly got a rash on my neck, and I went to see the doctor, which I don't really like to go and see, but I went to see him to get some, just an emergency appointment. And he sort of, after he dealt with that, he started talking about weight, and he told me, he tried to say, it's not your fault that you're fat. You can, there's surgeries now that you can do this, well, you should seriously look at getting a gastric bypass. And for some reason, I don't know why, that flipped the switch in me. It was almost, I almost felt like jumping over the desk and swinging at him when he said that. Because what it meant to me was that someone was looking at me going, you're hopeless. And I hated that. So from that moment, even though I hate that doctor a lot, I got to thank him, because from that moment, I started figuring out health. And so it continued for a few years. I lost a bunch of weight while traveling and doing everything else that I was doing. And then last year came along, I had several emotional, turbulent period over 2018, 2019. So I put on maybe about 15 kilos again. And then July 2019, I decided, look, enough is enough. I didn't get back to the weight that I was at, but I just decided enough was enough and I needed to get back on it. So I did some further research and got back on it. And the path that I decided to take was, commonly known as intermittent fasting, and just decided to work on things that would make a difference. That includes all the endocrinology and everything else with the right people that know what they're doing on that too.
And there is a lot of this, and unfortunately, a lot of the information that we have been taught is all wrong. Breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. You don't even need to eat breakfast, and you don't need to eat all day. So intermittent fasting is actually healthy. It's the way we're probably designed to eat. And I know you actually you skip a day, don't you? You eat one day, skip a day, go back on the next day. And and yet, in spite of that, you still lift, don't you? Yes.
Yeah, no, I love lifting. It was one of the things that made me fall in love with the gym. I mean, I was someone, bearing in mind, I've spoken on stage, I've done all of this, I have success, et cetera, et cetera. And the first time I wanted to step into a gym, I was terrified. And it was the closest thing that I think I've ever experienced to a real anxiety attack, right? Like I don't really consider myself as someone who's going to get an anxiety attack, but that was as close as I could imagine to getting an anxiety attack, going into the gym for the first time. But I fell in love with lifting weights. And yes, you're right. I do alternate day fasting. That works better for me than the standard 16 and 8. Especially when I dug into the studies a little bit, the 16 and 8 sort of stopped making sense to me. And so the alternate day really works well. And it's easy while you're traveling. It's easy when you're working. It's just easy to do.
Right. Because when you don't have to eat food, you don't have to worry about what's available.
Exactly. And while you're traveling, you can also manage, because for me, the biggest challenge was while I was traveling and obviously eating lots of delicious food everywhere I'm going, and having meetings over lunch, meetings over dinner, et cetera, et cetera. So it forced me to find a new way to do business meetings. It forced me to find a new way to bond with my friends while I was traveling. And it works really well.
And that it does. And you do free weights. I know. I mean, if you want to share the numbers, share the numbers. I know it's a lot better than I'm doing, but congratulations to you.
Well, yeah, I mainly focus on after doing a lot of different weight stuff for about a year. I spoke to a particular doctor, and he said, "Look, you're not trying to lift for a competition. The only thing that you need to focus on is your compound movements, which is your deadlifts, your squats, your leg presses, and an incline chest press. And that's really what I focused on. And yeah, I had a phenomenal increase last year. I mean, my squats went all the way up to, 95 kilos. I'm not sure how much that is in pounds.
It's a little over 200.
Yeah, 209 pounds on a seated squat, on a box squat. And my deadlift went up to 155 kilos, which is 341. For a fat guy that isn't eating half of the time and never exercised before, that's a phenomenal increase. For me, I'm mind blown that I could do that in such a short period of time.
And if you show up in the gym, if you have the right form, if you get help, it's possible. I mean, I went through the same type of thing, and I'm older, so it's harder to get to some of those numbers, but I can still deadlift close to 300, and I'm okay with that. I'm not, my goal is not to be some bodybuilder. It's just to be in shape and to be strong. And as long as I can do that, I'm happy with that.
Yep, that's exactly right. That was my realization as well. Because before I was training in so many different weird ways. And once I spoke to the doctor that I really got a good relationship with, he basically said, you don't need to bother doing any of that, because what's your goal? Is your goal to perform on stage and do those things? And, my goal is really to be strong when it's important.
And that's the most important thing. As a business owner, you love what you do. It's why you started your business. However, the business of business causes you stress and anxiety and keeps you up late at night. Welcome to the club. Over 80% of business owners hate the business part of running a business. It doesn't have to be that way. No, you don't have to learn how to read complicated financial statements. We create systems that run in the background, and I implement the systems in conjunction with your bookkeeper and accountant, analyze the information, and bring you better questions on how to run your business. It's a lot less expensive than you think to have a service like this, and not having it is why so many business owners struggle with money. The outcome is you can focus on what you love in your business, knowing that your finances are in order. Your business becomes more valuable, and banks are standing in line to provide working capital. You get to sleep at night. Learn more by listening to episode 163 with Mike Michalowicz as we discuss the process, or go to profitcomesfirst.com. Want to cut to the chase? There's a link in the show notes for a 15-minute no-obligation call to see if this makes sense for you. Schedule now and get your business on a rock-solid foundation. You did do one other hormonal test that I have not heard talked about much, which is leptin.
Yeah.
So can you share what leptin is and how it prevents us from losing weight?
Yeah. So leptin, from what I understand, and I've got to clarify, I'm not a doctor. I'm basically a recovering fat guy. So I want to emphasize that. As much as I've done all my research, I don't want anybody to take what I'm saying as absolute gospel. But leptin really is going to help you along with insulin and ghrelin. It's going to help you basically help your fat cells release fat. And so that is it's more of it's a hormone that regulates energy balance. And if your leptin is out of whack, then your body's not going to let go of fat in the way that it's designed to do, even if you're eating less. And that's one of the fascinating things about fasting, and especially alternate day fasting, because there was a study done recently, the 4-year study, and they found that unlike calorie restriction, because ultimately from my understanding, you're losing weight because of calorie restriction. However, with the fasting versus the calorie restriction, with calorie restriction, your basal metabolic rate is going down because your body's still got access to sugar to fuel itself from. Whereas with fasting, they found that the BMR, the basal metabolic rate, was higher at the end of a fasting period than at the beginning, which is unreal when you think about it, right? It's almost, what they've proven is it's better to go without food than to have a little bit of food, basically.
And these are the scientific things that once you start to understand them, you can make small changes and get great success. And I did not know as much about the leptin. I understood the insulin resistance, which even when your body was releasing insulin, you still weren't pulling the sugar out of the blood. And because you've been doing so much sugar, it caused all kinds of problems. So it takes time, but it's lifestyle changes that bring this about. You don't need to take pills. You don't need to do these things. You need to get to the gym. You need to eat properly, and you need to eat the right foods. And that's a big part of it as well. And I'm not a doctor either. So this is coming from two guys who have lost weight and are in shape. So if you want to do things, don't follow a doctor who's overweight, who has no idea how diets work. Follow people who actually get success. So let's talk a little bit. You have the courses that you've built, and you've built them around real estate, precious metal, and stocks. Why did you decide to create the courses?
Funnily enough, the first time I decided to teach was after I did my first property deal. And then my dad dragged me along to a seminar. And the guy that was running the seminar, his name is Mark Anastasi, a good friend of mine. And he was running this seminar. My first time experiencing, a high stage selling seminar. I've never been to one of these before. And at during one of the breaks, I went to go and talk to him. And I was like, look, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here exactly. And I don't know what the hell you guys do. And he said, what do you do? And I just told him about it. And once he realized that I was negotiating property deals, once he realized I was just did my first deal, he said, you need to be on stage. And I just laughed. I was like, I have no desire to be on stage. I'm making enough money. Because, when you're 16, 18 years old, 68 grand in one hit is a lot of money. And he said, how about this? And I think one of the things that's so great about Mark is that he understood what motivated me instantly at that point in my life. And he said, how about this? How about you watch me on stage and then we'll have a chat about it, because I'm going to go on next. So he went on, and at the end of his talk, 90-minute talk, I saw, 100 people run past me, because I was obviously sitting on almost the back row on the aisle, so I could get out if I wanted to. 100 people run past me to give him $2,000 to attend a seminar that was happening in 4 weeks' time. So this guy basically made more money in 90 minutes than I did with months of work trying to get a property deal together. And so at that moment, I turned to my dad and I was like, I could do this shit too. And that's what motivated me to get into speaking. Now, fast forward, 2008 happened, and we were at a point where we were teaching people how to use leverage to trade the stocks, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously with the market crash, we had that part was the biggest flaw of anyone's strategy, right? Anyone who was trading anything with leverage got hit big time. My problem was that, I went to, I had a meeting with my lawyer and just said, look, obviously clients have lost money because of leverage, not really anything to do with the strategy. And he reviewed the terms and conditions that he had written up for us. And he said, don't worry about it, you're covered. And that gave me so much discomfort. And I couldn't explain why until I was in the car driving back home. And he basically what it translated to for me was, I'm going to hand you a gun and I'm going to get you to sign a piece of paper that says, I promise not to point this gun at my leg and pull the trigger. And then I concede liability when you do that, because you didn't know the gun was going to go off. And so that didn't sit right with me. So I took a hiatus around 2008, 2009 for about a year. And I decided that for me, it was more important to teach people how to manage wealth for the long term rather than doing short-term things like trading and things like that. So I really built the programs to try and make investing safe and make safe investing exciting. Because I think a lot of people lose money with investing because they want the excitement rather than the actual profits. And so that's what we started with. And I picked Gold and Silver for Life. That was the first program that we created because I thought if I can make gold and silver investing exciting, I can do it with anything else. So I picked the hardest one first. We built that. Then we launched Property Profits for Life years later. And then we launched Stock Profits for Life. And then March of 2019, we merged all of them under the umbrella of Perfect Portfolio. But the goal is really to make safe investing exciting.
And that's interesting that you say people would rather have excitement than profit. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's not scary. It's terrifying. I personally think that most people do not respect the responsibility they have around the wealth that they have or can make. And I think that's where that comes from.
Or are we just not taught risk, or are we just automatically defaulting to, oh, that will never happen, or that's a once in a lifetime event, or they just don't get what they're getting involved in? I think you're right, but the problem with accepting the first argument that you've made, which is we're just not taught, is that it sort of alleviates responsibility. And I think no matter what upbringing you've had, no matter what schooling system you've had, I think we all sort of know that we're responsible for our families and we're responsible for our future generations. I think that's a knowing that we all sort of have genetically. And so from that perspective, I personally think that it's a responsibility factor that everyone should have to figure out wealth and figure out money. Because as much as people want to say money is not important, try. You can only have a certain number of good days without money. And that is very true. So one of the things I tell people is if you really have this knack to gamble, is put 95% of your money in a, boring vanilla plan that does its thing, and you can take your little pot of money and go play and gamble and buy stocks and see how well you do. And this way, you're playing in such a small pool of your money that you don't mess everything else up. Whether or not people do it is another choice.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. The only thing, most people, if they're not part of a program that's proven or working with someone that knows what they're doing, the only thing they should be putting their money into is the S&P 500 index fund. Any SPY, VOO, something like that, just put your money in there, leave it alone, and it's going to make you money. If you don't want to do anything else and you don't want to take things to the next level, then that is the best way of doing it. And the world that we live in now, cash is becoming less and less and less and less attractive as every year goes by, especially right now. So it's one of those things where if anyone's sitting on cash right now and has been out of the market for a year, you've cost yourself so much money in 2019. You're going to cost yourself a lot of money in 2020, and you could have, based on what happens in 2020, you could have generated a 50% increase in wealth if you just had it invested and not doing anything.
And that's true. I think the issue that creates is in today's market where stocks are highly valued and bonds are highly valued and real estate in many markets is highly valued, people are afraid of losing money in a down market. And I think that's why a lot of people in 2019 and currently may be sitting on the sidelines. And so that's a concern. I don't know how you address that.
Well, I think that anyone who is so the problem with human beings is we have this thing called a recency bias, and we sort of think that whatever happened yesterday is going to happen tomorrow. And everyone is so terrified of 2008 that they think it's going to happen again tomorrow. And the problem is that none of the statistics support that. All the statistics say that a 2008 style crash happens once every 70-ish years. So we've seen that for our lifetime. What we are going to see is slowdowns, corrections, and things like that, which happen every 18 months. This isn't new. It happens every 18 months. So if you're out of the market, you are costing yourself money. Every single month, every single year, you are costing yourself money. Now, as far as the markets go, my perspective is that the crash, the slowdown, the whatever that everyone has been terrified and waiting of has already happened under our noses. It's happened between 2018 and 2019. It was a 20-month period where the market went absolutely nowhere. It went down, it corrected, it came back up. We only started breaking out end of 2019. So anyone who's still waiting for a market downturn, I'm not talking about a correction, I'm talking about a market slowdown and a market downturn. It's already happened. It's done. And you missed it. You missed the opportunity to buy at the low period. It's already happened. That does not mean that we will not see a pullback and a correction. We will see one of those, but we see one of those every 12 to 18 months anyway. So that's nothing to be worried about. And anyone who's sitting out of the market right now is making the worst mistake that they're going to make. And the market will go up very well up until about 2035. And the reason for that is we're entering the prime spending years of the millennial class in the USA. And that, whenever those generational prime spending years come in, it creates a big lift in real estate, big lift in the stock market. So if you want to invest, real estate, stock market, gold and silver are going to do fantastic until 2035. From 2035 onwards, we'll start having to look at bonds.
So that's interesting because I think a lot of millennials are risk adverse to real estate in some places. They tend to be more, hey, I'll rent instead of buy a lot of times.
Sure, but as you know, if there's more renters, then the rental prices will go up. Subsequently, the value of the property will go up simply based on the rental yield. So from that perspective, the property is going to do very well. Does not mean that there will not be a pullback. And I think a pullback is a great buying opportunity. But until 2035, property is going to go up.
And there you've heard it. So in your courses, you talk about the wealth triangle principles, which is to buy assets at low prices, cash flow them, and then allow compounding to happen. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, as you study wealthy people and hang around wealthy people, you realize they're not actually smarter than anyone else. All they're doing is they figured out a couple things and they just keep doing them. And one of those things that they figured out is that in order to grow wealth consistently, you've got to buy an asset that you think is going to go up. And you've got to buy at market value or below market value, at true market value. Then you've got to generate a cash flow from that asset. And then you've got to use that cash flow to buy more of the asset that's going up. If you complete that triangle and you consistently do that, your wealth will go up. There is just no doubt about it. And that's all it is. It's very simple. There is no complication to wealth building. It is buy an asset that's going up, figure out how to cash flow it, take the cash flow and buy more of that asset, and don't spunk the cash flow on liabilities.
So in order for this to happen, you have to have patience for the underlying assets to grow. Most people expect overnight wealth, and that's what they're going after. Is that possible?
Yes, of course it's possible. Of course it's possible. Someone could have bought Bitcoin when it was 7,000 and it went up to 19,000 and they were smart enough to sell it. Sure, it's absolutely possible to have overnight wealth. The difference is I haven't seen too many people that create overnight wealth keep wealth for the long term. That is a very special trait. If you see someone who suddenly has overnight wealth and then manages to keep it and grow it, that's a special person, because generally the mindset will screw it up somewhere along the line.
And so let's talk about that. How do mindsets affect all of this? And what did you mean by mindsets?
Well, mindset is everything. A lot of people think that with wealth, you've got to get the right strategy, you've got to get the right opportunity, you've got to get the right this and the right that. And they forget to look at, in the mirror and go, do I have the right mindset? Because if you have the right mindset, there's not too many ways to create wealth that works. It's very simple. In business, it's as simple as create something that someone wants, make sure it costs you less than they're willing to pay you, and then sell as many of those things as you can. With investing, it's very simple. It's buy something that someone is going to want more of in the future and hold on to it. It's not that complicated to create wealth in any different way. All you've got to be able to do is have the right mindset so that you don't screw with the money once you make it. Like I said, one of the biggest lessons I got is, keeping money is more important than making it. And that's so important of a lesson. Someone could make, $500,000 a year and absolutely retire as a billionaire. Once you understand compounding, it's phenomenal what can happen with that. You don't have to run a unicorn business in order to achieve all of your financial goals that you have. You just got to be smart about how money works. And the mindset part of it is that it's understanding that it's not chasing the egotistical things that we are taught to chase. It's not chasing the so-called entrepreneurship that we have now on Instagram, that everyone's a freaking entrepreneur, So these things, being able to look past those things and just focus on the goal and understanding that the goal is to make money, that's a mindset. Mindset is a very fluid term that you can use, but it's really, if I was to sum it down, it's really about focus.
And that's important, is knowing what you want, being focused and making the right decisions. And again, it is at the end of the day, it's what you keep. Because if you keep spending more than you're making, or even if it's close, you're going to struggle. But the wider that gap and the more that you keep and you invest, you're guaranteed success, because the compound curve does work. It just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So what are some of the underlying principles that people will learn in your program?
The fundamentals of our strategy is very similar across the three asset classes of real estate, the stock market, and gold and silver. The real, the understanding that you need, whichever one you want to attack first, is understanding why you need these asset classes to start with. Now, what I like to share with people is typically you want a 40% allocation in real estate, a 40% allocation in the stock market, and a 20% allocation in gold and silver. So that sort of creates a very well-balanced portfolio. It's not going to be the highest performing portfolio. It's not going to be, but it's going to generate you a great return. And once you understand that, you're then going to learn about options and how to do options the right way. Because the problem with options is, and anyone who's experienced options before is probably going, I don't want anything to do with options. It's because the way options are taught is that they're taught with leverage, they're taught with margin, they're taught with a way that is putting you at risk in the market. The way we do options is we sit on the market's side, on the house's side, so to say, and we allow speculators to gamble on what's going on with the price in the market, and we collect premiums. So that's pretty much what we do. It's very simple. The special part about what we do, again, is not the strategy. As I've highlighted, the strategy in anything is not important. It's consistency and it's mindset that will get you the result. And that's why, I'm lucky to coach clients in 46 different countries for all these years. And our program hasn't changed. The strategy hasn't changed. The asset classes haven't changed. And the reason is because we specialize in getting people to do it, not the strategy itself. And that's what we do. Like, for example, when somebody becomes a client of ours, they'll get access to a coaching call every single week for life at no extra charge. We don't have a recurring subscription, nothing like that. What we are really good at is proving to people that if they just stick the course, they'll make the money.
What's the time investment someone should expect in order to manage their portfolio?
Well, I think at the beginning, each one of our courses takes about 6 hours to go through. And then obviously, however much time, there's obviously a diminishing time as you go from one course to the others, because you sort of have the fundamentals. But yeah, about 6 hours to start with, and then about an hour a week for the first few months. And then, it's going to get down to however much time you want to spend observing the market. So to say, I can glance at my phone and every day understand what's going on, what I need to do in about 5 minutes. So it's not a lot. Remember, we're not trading in and out. We're not sitting at the market when the market opens. We're not doing any of those things.
But it does take time to get used to that and to be able to make those decisions and to get it down to time. And I know in your course, you talk about you want people to allow their brain and nervous system to get used to trading. Why did you say that? Because
if you don't do that, your natural instincts of greed and fear will take over. You've got to be able to respond to the market and not just go with the market. And so that takes time. It takes lessons. It takes understanding. It takes an ability to be detached from the market. It takes these things which are very, very important and are the keys to success. But people don't focus on that. They focus on trying to get the next strategy. And it's not about the next strategy. Warren Buffett has had the exact same strategy for 60 years. It's nothing new. It's about the mindset. And that's why you've got to let your nervous system get comfortable with watching a portfolio decline, watching a portfolio increase. You've got to get used to these things. It's very interesting because, when you look at amateur traders and amateur investors, they sort of believe that when their account is in the green, that it's their money. But when the account is in the red, that they're just sitting on a paper loss. It's very interesting to watch that dynamic, and you've got to get used to that. I don't blame anyone for that, but that's the education that you need.
And there is no doubt. And your programs do not use any leverage, correct?
Zero leverage. I don't believe in leverage. After 2008, like I said, I will never, ever teach anybody to use any margin on any of their investing. You just do not need it.
Do you think you can time the markets?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My dad actually taught me a very important lesson. He said, time in the market is more important than timing the market. And that has stuck with me for since I started investing. So I don't try and time the market. I try and, I have to consume research that most of our clients have no reason to consume, which is sort of hedge fund level research and things like that. And obviously they're looking at trying to make predictions of when things are going to happen. So my challenge is, on a personal level, is that I have to turn myself off to that research and understand that, okay, it's going to happen in a sort of period, and I need to be able to respond to that rather than try and react to it.
And that's a big key is responding versus reacting. And if you know up front what your response is going to be, it's a lot easier to execute when you get to that point. And that's why having an investment process and an investment philosophy, understanding your own emotions and how you behave is very important in your ability to do the right thing when things go either good or bad, because either side we can make silly mistakes.
Absolutely. And, this is one of the things that frustrates me about my industry, which is the investment education industry. And I do not understand how anybody can teach a course. And bear in mind, I'm guilty of exactly what I'm about to I do not understand how you can teach a course over 3 days and expect somebody to trade a market in a year's time with the information that you taught them over 3 days, which is why now we have those weekly coaching calls that everyone gets for life, because the market changes, mindsets change, things go on in people's lives. They need that constant support to be able to react to the market from someone that's already done it.
And that's an interesting thing you said. We didn't kind of talk about that with weight loss, and we kind of talked about it at the beginning. You said you had mentors. How much have you surrounded yourself with people to help you make better decisions? Always.
Whether it's through books, whether it's through real, people that I'm talking to, whether it's through consultants, it's all. And I regard myself as fairly proficient when it comes to finding out information that I need to know. So really, what I'm using a consultant for is for guidance and verification, and that's it. So I have a good understanding of fasting and how it works, for example, but I need someone there to be able to monitor what's going on and verify that I'm doing the right thing and just give me guidance on certain things. So I use mentors in an interesting way. So a lot of people like to say this mentor was, my mentor for life and et cetera, et cetera. And I've just never had the privilege to have someone that was always constantly growing past me. Always. And so I've always had to have mentors for a specific period of time or for a specific goal. And that's what I like to encourage people to do as well. Have a mentor for a period of time for a specific goal, and then find another mentor for the next goal. It might be the same person, but reevaluate and then consciously choose that I want this person to take me to this level, and this is the result I want.
And knowing that up front, being clear makes it a lot easier for everyone, because when we know where you're going and what you want, it's a lot easier to get there. Otherwise, we take you in the wrong direction.
Yeah, we live in a world right now where a lot of people want other people to tell them what to want. And that is the most ridiculous thing that's happening right now. People are looking to YouTube, and people are looking to people creating content, quote unquote, to try and get guidance on what they should want. That is the most ridiculously absurd thing that I've ever seen in my life. You should know what you want before you go looking for the person that can take you there. If you don't, one of the quotes I live by is, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything.
Yeah, that goes back to a sucker is born every minute, right?
Exactly. So you better know what you want before you go out there consuming Gary Vee's content, Grant Cardone's content, Russell Brunson's content, my content, your content. We all got content, and all of our agendas is to get you to buy into our programs. Let's just be honest, right? Some of us want the right people in our programs. Some of us want anyone in our programs. And if you don't know what you truly want, you're going to fall for anything, and you're going to keep going around and around in circles. So you people have to get used to making decisions, standing on their own 2 feet on their decisions, and then deciding to proceed. And at that point, then go find someone to help you do that.
I've heard that Gary Vee has kind of changed his outlook on life. I haven't paid enough attention, so I don't know how much that is the case, but I've heard he's kind of changed his focus a bit.
What do you mean? I had no idea. I haven't consumed any of that information for a long time.
Gary Vee was Mr. Marketing and just hammering it like crazy. And lately I heard he's much more of, why are we doing this? What's the purpose behind it? Instead of just going full bore into his advertising and pushing stuff. So getting a conscience. I don't know that he did or didn't have one, but the way he's portraying himself has somewhat shifted, I heard.
That's an interesting point. I don't know. I'm only commenting based on what you've just told me. But the one thing I love about Gary is his ability to react to what a market is giving him. And his market has moved to that. And he's about, if that's what he's transitioned to now, I would say he's about 9 months behind his market, because his market was already there. If you I remember last time watching one of his Q&A sessions or something, that was really a large amount of questioning that came towards him. So I'm not saying he's lying about that, but what I am definitely saying is Gary is fantastic at, trading off of whatever the market's giving him.
Knowing Gary, he was probably ahead of the curve, because while I'm saying this, it may be something I read 9, 10, 12 months ago. So
right.
He may have been ahead of the market, behind the market. I don't know. You can't always tell.
You can never tell. You can really never tell. It's just Gary is just fantastic at giving the market what it wants. It's something that I need to get better at. Unfortunately, I can't do it with investing simply because I know what is right with investing, and I can't, just because everyone's swinging onto the monkey branch of cryptocurrency, I can't go and do that because it goes against my principles of investing. But Gary is fantastic at that, at just giving the market what it wants, and that's one of the things that I got to get better at.
Always improving.
Yeah.
So, based on our conversations today, what is one action step people can take to move forward this week?
Yeah, well, very simple. Go get a freaking broker account. Everyone knows by now that every successful person on earth has an investment portfolio, has a stock market portfolio, has a real estate portfolio, has, investments in their portfolio. And if you do not have a broker account, you are not even taking the minimum step to do that. And you can get a free broker account. It doesn't cost you anything. So go get a broker account and get that journey started.
And that's very true. I think a lot of times, at least in the US, everyone is just taught to invest in their 401k, and that's wonderful. But if you invest in your 401k, your money's locked up till closer to retirement, and there's ways around that. But having a broker account means you can build wealth outside of there. That gives you a lot more flexibility in life. And say who has broker accounts? Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, TD Ameritrade. I don't even know if they got bought up by somebody. All of those are what we're talking about. There are also the apps that are out there today that you can do on your phones. It whatever works for you. If you haven't started, get started. You can always switch in the future. It's not hard to move from one brokerage to another if the one that you have doesn't serve you anymore.
That's right. There is no right brokerage. And if you do not own a single stock, get a freaking broker account and buy a stock. I don't care which stock it is. You don't need to put thousands of dollars in. Just buy one single stock. Just buy one stock. Just do that. Get over that. Buy one damn stock, and that will teach you more and give you more confidence than anything else you're going to listen to.
Yeah, I've been buying stocks since my early 20s, real early 20s. I know when I was in college, people were buying stocks back then in college.
Yeah, it doesn't happen now. It's crazy why it doesn't happen now.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, start with Apple. That's one of the ones that keeps going up.
Yeah, unfortunately, Apple's just too overpriced for most people. So, just start with anything. Just think of your favorite company, go find it on the stock market and just buy one share. It's going to cost you $50, $100, $200, whatever it is. Just go buy one damn share of a stock.
Once you do, go read you'd have to learn how to read their balance sheet and their earnings and all of that, which is a whole nother education. But if you can understand how a company functions, you'll understand how your personal finances function. They're exactly the same. And so it will give you the financial education to build your own wealth.
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? Because I've always found that. So I don't recommend anyone go and read any balance sheets or anything like that, simply because for me, I know that the easiest investment that anybody is going to make is an index fund. And so for me, I'm saying buy a stock, but I'm not intending on having anyone become a stock market investor or a trader. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is just to get you over the fear of buying a stock. You don't need to worry. Like, there are people that are very, very good at reading balance sheets, reading annual reports, and reading that and making trade decisions on that. I just don't think most people are good at that.
Most people aren't good because most people refuse to read the income statements. Business owners don't even read their own income statements, let alone somebody else's. So, yeah, that's the problem. It's not that people aren't good at it. It's that people don't actually take the time to do it and then or learn how to do it. And I have an MBA. They did a horrible job of teaching me how to read balance sheets and income statements. I read one simple book by the master at this, who is Warren Buffett. I'm like, oh, this is how Warren Buffett reads income statements. That makes a lot of sense. Now I know how to read income statements. It didn't take long. He's not a rocket scientist. He just reads a million income statements, knows what to look for, and you can get the book and you can learn what he does and do what he does. At the same point, if to make it easy for people, you can also buy just a single unit of the market. You don't have to buy a stock. You can buy the entire market in one unit that's probably $100 or less as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can go and buy one stock of, just looking at it now, VTI, which is a broad market index, and you get a piece of every single listed company in the US, and it's going to cost you $169 right now.
Cheaper than an iPhone.
Way cheaper than an iPhone. It's going to teach you more than an iPhone. Unfortunately, the iPhone was designed to do something that it's not doing.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Well, people, good people.
When you say good people, you mean relationships with good people, surrounding yourself with them?
Yeah, surrounding yourself with good people. I'm not really a big fan of having tons of people around me and things like that, but the people that I do have around me, you know, are very special to me.
And that's always important. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Health. Number one, everything I've learned about health, and after losing, 40 odd kilos, I wish I'd known how important that was earlier on.
And it is. And too often when we're young, we don't realize what the long-term consequences are. And even though I'm in my 50s, I'm now thinking about my health in my 90s because I'm like, I don't want to be one of those people with a walker. I'm one of those people who can still run around.
Yep.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Understand compounding and understand, investing. Because if you understand those two things, it's going to take care of you for your future. Most people, they'll get a new iPhone every single year, and if you just work out how much the cost of upgrading your phone every single year is going to cost you in 40 years' time, I think you'll fall over. Even if you're already sitting down, you're going to fall off that chair if you understand that. So I think that's probably the couple most important things.
And compounding works in every single area of life, with your knowledge, with your health, yes, with your wealth, with your friendships, every single area. The compounding principles always work.
Yeah.
If people would like to find you and connect, learn about the courses, what is the best way for them to do that?
I'm not on any social media, so I'm not a fan of that. You can't find me on anything. Perfectportfolio.com, or probably better is if they go into the show notes and get the links to the trainings from your show notes. That will take them straight there.
And we will have all of that in the show notes and make it easy for them to find. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Good conversation today. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Once again, we see how all the parts fit together. Health, wealth, time, relationships. We need to have great mentors, and we need to change our mindsets to ones that support our success. This week's action step was to open a brokerage account. I've had one since I graduated college, and my kids already have theirs. What about you? If you don't have a brokerage account, now's a great time to get started. I want to be clear on the courses that Minesh is offering in the link. It's an affiliate link. That means I get compensated if you purchase them. I didn't even know that he had such an offer when I booked him on the podcast. He was on because I wanted to learn from him and the systems he used. If you decide you want to invest in one of these programs, you should take the time to understand yourself. I don't want people to waste money. If you want to chat with me for a few minutes to see if they're a good fit for you, please use the scheduling link or just email me to set up a time. More than likely, I may talk you out of it or tell you to do some more homework before you invest. It has to be a good fit for where you're at currently. If you're still listening, you must have liked the episode, so please share it with a few friends. It can help start a great conversation, and I'd appreciate it. You can also connect with me on Facebook, on the page or group for Richer Soul. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. Can I help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability? Just email me. We can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit for coaching. For many people, one session allows them to take a giant leap forward towards their dreams. You can get me at rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.